y'all, Dixie here. Today I want to talk to you about my favorite trail runners for 2021. First things first, I want to address some shoes that I tested recently that are not on this list, but I know some of y'all probably have some questions about them. I tested the Inov-8 G260s and 270s. The G260s had pretty grippy tread. They also looked attractive. They're a nice looking shoe in my opinion, but the freaking shoelaces would not stay tied. So if you're gonna get a pair of those, I recommend having the lock laces or just be better at double knotting and tying your shoes than I am. But that was one of my biggest pet peeves with those shoes. And in addition to the laces not staying tied, I just found that the toe box area was more restrictive than I care for, but I had more hopes for the 270s. The shoelaces stay tied a lot better, so I was a fan of that, but I noticed that they ate my socks. So if you're somebody who likes wearing ankle socks like me, those might not work for you. But also towards the end of my hike when I was wearing the G270s, I started having issues in my left big toe. My toenails on my big toes are ingrown again. So the left one started giving me some troubles, whereas in other pair of trail runners, I don't have that issue. I think both the G260s and 270s are a quality pair of shoes and that they will work for some people, but for me personally, it just didn't work out. But now, to move on to the favorites. I'm having a really hard time trying to narrow it down to one shoe that I think I love more than all others. I've got two right now that are neck and neck. So I'm gonna run through the pros and cons of each one of those and then let y'all know which ones I'll be taking with me on the Florida Trail. First, let's go over the Altra Lone Peaks 4.5. They actually have a newer version now, of course, the 5, but I haven't tested those yet. They do look really sharp though. But I've been stuck on Altras since 2017, mainly the Lone Peaks. I've tried a couple of other styles, but that's just the one that I prefer. They've got the zero drop, which just means that the toe of your foot and the heel area of your foot stay level. They're at, you know, the same height from the ground. Also, the Altras work well for me because they have a wide toe box. I had some issues on the Pacific Crest Trail during my thru hike of a pair of trail runners being too small. I got some blisters under my toenails. They ended up falling off. And then later on the Continental Divide Trail, I had some issues with ingrown toenails. So I've found for me, it's very important for my toes to be able to spread out while I'm walking and just kind of, you know, how they naturally splay. That's something that I have to be comfortable. So anyway, Altra has done a really good job of maintaining that wide toe box. Another good thing about Altra is it seems that their trail runners hold up pretty well. There have been some slight issues with maybe the tab on the toe area coming down or a hole being worn in, but it just seems like every time they redesign a new model of the Lone Peaks, they address whatever issue there was before. But all in all, the Altras hold up pretty well for me on trail. I switch out my trail runners somewhere between 400 to 500 miles because I find that after that point, the support in the shoe is gone. And if my arch is, you know, not supported and it's flexing too much, then that plantar fasciitis crops back up. So for me, the Altras last fine, 400 to 500 miles. But if for some reason they haven't in the past and there's been like an issue with this shoe is messed up in a way that it can't function before I think I've gotten the life out of it, then I've contacted Altra's customer service and they have been absolutely wonderful. And that's really important for people who are on the trails nonstop. The Altra Lone Peak is a moderately cushioned shoe. They've got a stack height of 25 millimeters and pretty grippy tread. I've never had any traction issues with the Lone Peaks. I also like how Altra Lone Peaks seem to dry out pretty quickly. So if you go through a water crossing and just say, you know, forget it, I'm gonna tear through with my shoes, they seem to dry out pretty quickly, especially, you know, if it's in the middle of the day and you give them some time to dry out. Although I love the Altra Lone Peaks, of course there are some cons. First, I found that they're not the most comfortable shoe for road walking. And the reason I say this is because you can really feel what's under your feet when you're wearing these shoes. And I think that can be a positive or a negative thing. So if you're on a trail that has a lot of road walks, or if the terrain where you live and where you hike is typically very rocky and you're a tender-footed person, these might not work out for you. Not saying ultras in general, but just the lone peaks. You might need to go with something that has a bit more cushion or protection from hard surfaces. But for me, I'm not a tender-footed person, and a lot of times I do like to feel what I'm stepping on. I think that there's something that I don't realize that's going on all the time, but you know, if I step on a root on accident and it's a rainy day, there's something in my brain that's like, whoop, tread lightly, because that thing's probably slick. And when I'm on rocks, I almost kind of like grab and grip with my feet. So with other shoes, you might not be able to do that as well. The Ultra Lone Peaks just work for me. Me and Ultra Lone Peaks go together like peas and carrots. I don't know what it is, but they've just been good to my feet. They typically cost about $125 or so, but the 4.5s are on sale for a pretty good discount. The only shoe I've found so far that has even come close to matching how much I love the Ultra Lone Peaks is the Topo Athletic Terraventure 2s. I tested these out for about 100 miles on the Pinhoti Trail. They seem to have held up well, not a whole lot of wear and tear. I found that the road walks were much more comfortable with these than the Ultra Lone Peaks or the G260s or 270s or any trail runner that I've tried for that matter. The biggest thing I was worried about with the Topos was that they're not a zero drop shoe. There's actually a 3mm drop between the heel and the toe of the shoe, but that didn't seem to cause me any issues, any pain with my plantar fascia. So I think because it's such a shallow drop that my foot's good with it. The heel is at 25mm and the toe is at 22mm. The Terraventure 2s are also considered a moderately cushioned shoe, but I feel like they're a bit more cozy and cushioned in the ankle area, so maybe a little more comfortable than the Ultra Lone Peaks. But of course, there are trade-offs with everything. If you're trompsing through water with the Terraventure 2s versus the Ultra Lone Peaks, chances are the Ultra Lone Peaks are going to dry out a bit more quickly because they're not as cushioned, where the Terraventure 2s are probably going to hold on to that water a bit longer. Regardless, they seem to be a breathable shoe, so I don't think that that's going to be a deal breaker either way. When I'm wearing them, I feel like the Terraventure 2s have more of a sturdy sole. I can't feel rocks as much, and I think that's probably why the road walks are a little more comfortable than in the Lone Peaks. So that can be a pro or con either way. Again, if you like to feel what you're stepping on, you're going to feel less of that in these. The toe box is nice and wide, so my toes had plenty of room to spread out, and I didn't have any issues with my ingrown toenails on my big toes. Probably the biggest con to the Terraventure 2s is they're not that attractive. They don't have a good color selection in my opinion, but hopefully that's something that they'll work on in the future, throwing out a few more options. Maybe also the women's shoes are a little prettier, but all in all, that's not an issue for me. As long as it feels good on my foot and it functions well, I'm not really worried about what it looks like. Even though I'd set out to pick a favorite, not sure if I could ever say decisively that I prefer one of these over the other. Obviously, I'm gonna have to keep making that decision every 500 miles or so, but I feel confident that whichever one I choose, it's not going to be a bad decision. So as far as the Florida Trail goes, what to do? I've been racking my brain about this since I got off the Pinhoti Trail. I think that the Ultra Lone Peaks would do better in the swamps as far as me being able to feel what's under my foot. Also, with walking through a lot of water, I think that they'll dry out more quickly. But I don't know that the Terraventure 2s would really be problematic in those conditions. And I think for the road walks that I'm going to be faced with on the Florida Trail, the Topo Terraventure 2s will definitely do a lot better than the Ultra Lone Peaks. So what I'm going to do is start off with the Topo Athletic Terraventure 2s. I'm going to wear them out for the rest of their life. That way I get a good test on will they hold up for that 400 to 500 mileage that I use my trail runners for, and just kind of compare how beat up they get versus the Ultra Lone Peaks. And that way I can see if they're an issue in the swampy waters and not being able to feel what I'm stepping on, etc. And then after I wear those out, I can decide whether I want to get another pair of those or if I want to test out the Lone Peak 5s whenever they're released. Or maybe even the Topo Athletic Run Venture 3 with 0 drop. All right, y'all, that's all I have for you today on my trail runner predicament. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.